we're going to be upgrading an ASP.NET Core project. It's actually a project template using .NET New, but we're going to be exploring some of the new features in .NET 6 and C# 10 with regards to ASP.NET. So I have a giant thread called the .NET 6 Improvements Mega Thread over on the .NET Boxed Templates repo. And there's a lot to cover in here. I thought tonight we'd start with looking at the iLogger implementation, and in particular there's been some improvements made to Microsoft extensions.logging, which allows you to log messages in a slightly different way, which improves performance. So it's using source generators under the covers and generates all the code that does the actual logging, and you just call this function over here, which is just a partial function, so the implementation is not you don't have to write it. That's what the source generator does for you. So I thought we'd just explore that and see how it works before we plug that into the project that I have. So I thought I'd create a new project, not C++, C#. We'll just do an ASP.NET Core project, and we'll go next, and we want .NET 6, no authentication, don't care about HTTPS, and we'll create that and plug in this code straight away. We don't want to erase the project, remove that. We want add new project, empty project, web app, there we go. Web app, no, not web app. API, there we go. Next. And we don't care about open API support. We'll create that. So we've got our controller over here. Excuse me. And we've got a nice logger already created for us. That's brilliant. And if we fire this up, we will get what we will get. So it looks like they've now changed it to default to using Kestrel to start up applications. And if I fire this up on port 5194, why don't we get anything? Oh, because weather forecast. I have to go to /weather forecast. So there we have our API. Now, how do we code this up using this new logging system? So let's try adding a new partial class called log and just try using it. So this dot logger dot, well, I guess we don't use that anymore. We just use log dot could not open socket, and we'll just test that like that and see what happens. So let's fire that up again. Excuse me, I still can't shake this cough. Could not open socket test. So okay, we've got our critical log message there. Let's try out a few things. So first of all, I wonder if I can turn this into an extension method so I don't have to call it like that. That looks a lot nicer. Does that work? Is that going to work? Come on, where's it gone? There we go. Oh. So that still works, so that's good. And then the other thing I wanted to investigate was whether we could pass an exception in here. So I don't know, throw new exception. And we'll move this down here. And we want to, I guess we want to pass the exception as the first argument. And I guess that would mean it would get passed in like that. Let's see if that works. That did indeed work. Okay, so that looks really easy actually. You can name the function whatever you want. I wonder if I have to make this public for it to work. If I did internal, what would happen? Because if you're writing a public library, you often don't want to expose a log type, you know, to your consumers. Oops. Oh, you can't see. Ah, I forgot to change this code. All right, here we go. Let's just review really quickly for the viewers. So I have a function here and there's this log type. You set a bunch of attributes on it to tell it how you want the log message, the log level and the event ID to appear in the log message. And then you can give any old function name and then you can just use a logger, call the function and pass in the logger, the exception and the host name, and then that will log the message. And it turns out this works. You can just plug in some exceptions over here, some host names, whatever you want, it just works. So I was just having a look to see if I could change this to internal and it would still work. And could not, yeah, it did work. Interesting. Okay, that's good. So what's the next step? So let's have a look at this guy. So we know how to do this now. Let's have a look at actually implementing it in the project that we want to upgrade. So I have an API template project over here. This is an API with Swashbuckle, Swagger, all the nice features. So we're just going to fire this up to show you what it looks like. So here's the project. There's only one controller in it, and you can pretty much do anything with a bunch of cars in the controller. You can get cars. Let's just try out the API. There's our cars. You can see it's very well documented. It shows you all the different features that you can use with Swashbuckle and Swagger. And if you want to create this project, you can go to the .NET Boxed repo, and you can go to this API project template, and it shows you all the options that you can turn on and off, and then you can just install it using this and create the project using this, and then you can also pass additional options over here. So that's the project, and let's start upgrading it. So to start with, it looks like I've already upgraded the SDK version. I've allowed pre-release as well because .NET 6 is not available yet. And what's next? So we want to upgrade this to .NET 6.0 and the test project as well. You can ignore all this stuff. This is for the project template authoring. Anytime you see this kind of #if or end if. Because this is a project template, it just allows users to turn these features on and off, and you can kind of conditionally include code into the project. There's a few different ways of doing it, so you can use this kind of syntax or this kind of syntax as well. So if you see that, you can just ignore that. Let's upgrade the project references. Update, include pre-release, because .NET 6 is still not released. And we'll see what pops up here. So we want this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. I think that's it. We'll update those. So just check what changes that made. Looks like it updated a few of the projects, but not all. If we try running it now, does it still run? It does indeed. Cool. So we haven't broken anything for a start. Let's go through our giant mega list and see if we can fix anything. So .NET Watch, does .NET Watch run by default? So the .NET Watch command changed. Is it not in this? I've got the wrong link in here maybe. So I think that just affects the launchSettings.json file. So we used to have to write .NET Watch run, and I think you can just omit the run now. And that will just carry on working. So let's try that out. Let's change it to watch Kestrel, and we'll control F5 that to start the application without debugging. That's building the project now, and we've got a bunch of warnings that we need to fix, but that's expected. And it started the project. If we go to what's the URL for this? Is it just localhost 5000? There we go. That's still working. Let's try changing some code. Just stick a blank line in there, and that hot reloaded the changes. And that's carried on working. So that's our first change. So we'll check that in. Upgrade target framework to .NET 6.0. Use .NET Watch instead of .NET Watch Run. Enable hot reload. So, oh, okay. So hot reload is a new feature that allows you to change code and it automatically just carries on working. So for that feature, we need to add this little thing over here into our launchSettings.json file once again. So I think this only works if you have command name project. So we'll search for command name. There we go. Command name project. And we'll stick that under there. So there's only 2 of those. So let's try that out. If we go back to our Kestrel launch setting, give that a second. Oh, we can't do that while that's running because it's using the same port. Bring that window across again. So we're using Kestrel now, and I'm just going to make a change to some code. Where's my source solution explorer gone? Why is it over on the right? Actually, the default for Visual Studio is on the right. I switched because somebody pointed out that having it on the left is closer to your actual code. So you're just doing this with the mouse as opposed to that movement, which is a lot further away. So I switched and never looked back. Let's see, what code can we change? Let's go into here, and what shall we do? Shall we just change some, I wonder if this will work, if I can just change some text for this options thing up here. So if I can just stick something in there, whoops. Don't know why I selected all that code. Does that work? Whoops. Wrong window, too many windows open. That certainly doesn't work. So some things are supported and other things are not. So if I do return this dot not found, say, instead of OK, will that work? That one seems to work. So let's try that. Try it out, execute, and we got a response of 200 OK. So that didn't work. Am I calling the right API? Options, no arguments. That certainly didn't work, did it? Let's put hello world in there. Oh, we have to hit this hot reload button. That's what I forgot to do. So if I do that now, execute that, and we got hello world. Excellent. Okay. So if I go back and just change the response to not found, hit the reload button, execute, and we got a not found response. Now I have seen an extension out there that hits this button for you. Hot reload. I don't know where I saw it. It may not be available for, well, it should be available for it should be available for Visual Studio 2022, because that's when this feature of hot reloading came about. Well, it came about with .NET SDK 6 though, actually. So maybe it's not available for this version of Windows. If I go to all apps and switch over to the other Visual Studio 2019, it might be available here instead. I don't remember. Continue without code. Extensions. can't remember what the extension was called. Browser reload on save. That's the one, by Mads Christensen, the king of all extensions. Oh, this, I'm not sure if this one is for hot reload. Enables reload on save, but not hot reload. Yeah, I'll have to keep an eye out for that one. Maybe it was a Visual Studio setting. So if I do, oh, here we go, hot reload on file save. Excellent. That's what you want, isn't it? So if I say, you know, foo bar, stick that in there. I just hit save. I didn't do anything else, and it worked straight away. So that's, I don't know why that's not the default. That's what you would want to turn on all the time. Let's see what other settings there are on this. Okay. You want that setting. Keep that on, is my advice. So we've enabled enable hot reload. What else can we do? Let's go back to my improvements. Add .NET Run messages to launch settings. So let's check this out. .NET Run messages. This is another launchSettings.json file. Oh, I already added it in a previous PR, I think. This is a .NET 6 feature, I think. Or I'm not sure what version of .NET it was released in. So what does it do? It just adds a message in this window, I think. It just prints the words building prior to invoking .NET Build. So not massive, but yeah, it's a thing. Let's see what the new launchSettings.json file looks like in a blank project. So we have command .NET Run messages true. It launches the browser, launches it on a particular URL. Yeah. I'm not. Interestingly, they don't have hot reload on. Does that mean it just doesn't work? Let's see. Why would they do that? So I've turned that on. We're just going to go and change some code. We'll just stick a null in there for now, or an empty array. Why can't I return that? Oh, of course. So it's going to return an empty array of weather forecast instead of something with some data in it. And there's our web application with our go. Oh, we need to bring this back. Slash weather forecast. So that's still bringing back the old data. And if I do that, is that going to work? It did work. So why do you need that new setting? That's interesting. Why do we need that new setting? Windows is being a bit strange and not switching windows for me. Does anyone see that? Very strange behavior there. Yeah, don't seem to be able to switch windows at the moment. What's going on there? So why do we need this new setting? Let's investigate. I'm gonna have to hot reload profile. So let's go back to and search in here. Remove hot reload profile from launchSettings.json. Interesting. No longer required. So it looks like maybe we don't need this setting anymore. Remove the hot reload profile requirement in launch settings to perform hot reload. We could base this on the TFM and use some mechanism to opt out of it and get the 5.0 behavior. Let's go back. So it looks like we don't need that setting anymore. They just made it the default. So we can remove it. Just interested to see what this says about .NET Watch and that particular setting. So this person is using the setting. Anyway, .NET Watch should have the ability to explicitly specify profile. So it looks like that this guy is complaining about a new file not being included when you do hot reload. It looks like there might be some issues around this feature. I'm sure it will get better, but for now we can remove this setting. Okay, so if we go back here, go back, we don't need this anymore, so that's done. This guy we added already, so that's done. Switch to date only and time only structs. I don't think I set a date time. New. Let's get this find window over here onto this screen. We'll stop this as well. New date time. So it looks like I'm doing some stuff here. There's a repository of cars that I use. And it doesn't look like I'm using any date times, so no need to do that. By the way, if you're new to .NET, you should prefer datetime offset to datetime to represent a time, a date and a time, because it includes the offset from UTC time, which is like the global standard time that everyone uses regardless of time zones. And this guy will give you an offset from this. So British time right now is UTC +1 hour, and I think in Kenya, for example, it's UTC +4, and so on and so forth. So use this and you will not go wrong. And if you really need more power, use Node time built by Johnsky instead. That's the way to go. So in this particular project, we don't need to use date only and time only. Date only includes only the date portion without the time. So we don't need that. Use try get non-enumerated count. I'll come back to this. Are we using any log messages? Let's plug in our new logging stuff. iLogger. I can't remember. Oh, it looks like we're not using it. Fine. I think I use it elsewhere for other things in a different project template. So we'll come back to that. Use validate on start to validate configuration options on startup. So this one is an interesting one. So once you add some options, you want to call validate data annotations to make sure that your JSON is correct or your configuration is correct, and validate on start, I think, just ensures that your configuration is validated on application startup. So let's go and check that out. I have a bunch of I have this guy. Is this the thing I'm thinking about? I actually have the project. So I wrote this function to turn those 3 lines that you see here into a single line of code. Let's actually read this bit properly. When the application starts, we want immediate feedback. So let's check out that extension method I created. That's in this other .NET Boxed repo called framework. And I think it was just in here somewhere. No. In here. So here I'm actually calling configure instead. Configure, add options. Here we go. So we added validate data annotations and validate on start. I've already upgraded this particular project to .NET 6. It's the code still not checked in or anything. I'm just having a play. So we need to add that function there. I think we should try this out on our blank project. So let's give that a go. So we have our app-settings.json file. We have our program. Oh, it's using the minimal API stuff. Which I don't think is useful for any project of any real size. But this really only is supposed to be for simpler projects, I guess. So we want to go and copy that that slice of code. We'll copy that. And this changes a bit to build.services. We'll create a class called myOptions. And we'll add a string value called value, and we'll make this required. using a data annotation. So that's what this guy does. It ensures that this is filled up with some values. And so we've added some options, but we need to bind it to the configuration, builder.configuration. So now if I go, what am I doing here? Let's have a look at this. Binder options. You can also provide a custom validation delegate. That's a pretty cool idea to do. Get section, and we'll call this section, oops, can't type, my options. So we'll go over here, we'll type my options, stick that in there. Oops, that messed up the indentation. Test, call that test. So to start with, we'll also app.services.get required service I options, not IIS options, I options, my options. So we're just going to resolve these options and ensure that we can log them out to the console. And then play around with the settings and see what happens. So this is the first time. We don't need you in the way. So okay, so that's strange. It's logging my options for this value. That's kind of odd. Oh, okay. So this is an options. I should have called this something else. Let's call it foo to illustrate the point a little better. And then dot value dot foo. Okay, let's try that again. And we should try the hot reload on save feature as well. So hot reload, are you going to do something? We didn't get a value. Did we not get a value? What happened there? Test. So we got our value. Let's now test the fact that this is empty. What happens then? So we got a validation exception. If we remove validate on start, do we still get, we shouldn't get the validation exception anymore. Oh, we do. Oh, that's because I'm resolving it here. So we should probably do this somewhere else. I know. Let's stick it in the controller. Remove this old code that we had. And we'll take this guy in. So this will now return, this will console write line the options value. So if we run this now, we'll need this, and come Come on, load. Oh. Options validation exception. What's in the exception? Interesting that it validates it at this point. Even, okay, so yeah, it didn't validate on the start that time. So if we bring back validate on start, dot validate on start, now we should see an exception straight away. In theory, yes, we do. Okay, so that's all good. So I just need to add this guy wherever validate data annotations is in that framework project. And I'll come back and update this comment as well to say registers to the service container also runs. I suspect I've copied this a few times. On application startup. On application startup. I'm not sure why you would want to run data annotation validation at any other time other than startup. Fail early, make sure your application is not in a bad state. So that's why I have this helper function. You can see that it does save a fair few lines of code. You know, 4 lines there. And then also actually I'm registering the value. So if we go back to our example, when we resolve the type in the controller, I'm having to get the I options and then call .value on it to get the my options object. But what I can actually do is just change this to be my options, get rid of .value, which is kind of superfluous. If I run that now, that's going to fail. But we can, did I fill that back in? So that's gonna fail because it can't find my options. So what we can do instead, and I do this a fair bit, is register that type. So dot services dot register dot add singleton my options, and then we just want to do I forgot what I was doing here. Just do that, and then we don't actually need that generic argument. So now that will work. If I rerun that, just do the hot reload. Oh, I misclicked. Rerun that. I did run hot reload. Have I not got the option on? I do. Go back. Oh, I've got that weird Windows 11 bug again, where I can't. That doesn't seem to be reloading properly. Let's try the old-fashioned way, where we stop and start again. So hot reload, nice idea, but doesn't seem to work very well. So yeah, so we still got our test, and that's now resolving. So that I do that a fair bit. and now I've ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code, and condensing that into a single helper function I think is quite valuable. And that's what my helper function in the .NET boxed.asp.NET Core NuGet package does. So it's just called configure and validate singleton, and you just give it, it's an extension method on the iService collection. You give it the configuration, you give it the type of your options value, so my options in this case, in our case, and that's it. And then it does those 5 lines of code for you. Saves you a bunch of time. So I think I've just updated that in the framework code, and then in the actual template I use, did I close in the actual template? I use these functions, configure and validate singleton, a fair bit. So that just saves a bunch of boilerplate code. Let's keep going. Brilliant, I've done validate on start. Use the new app.use overload. So what's this all about? So add a new app.use overload that requires users to pass the HTTP context to the next function, which will save 2 per request allocations over the previous extension method. So this is all about performance. So if we look at this middleware, the previous middleware didn't have the HTTP context being passed into it, and the next one does. So let me expand some of this code. Let's find a really good example. There we go. So they're using the app.use function in the startup method or wherever, and before they've changed the signature of this, so you can pass in the context. It looks like they're not passing in the next function there, the next middleware. So this is going to run this code, and then you need to execute the next middleware. I don't think I have any middlewares in this template, but in my framework code I do have some middleware. And actually what I've done is implement iMiddleware, which is just has one function, HTTP context, and the next middleware to run. And the way you implement that is I've just run the next middleware, you pass in the context, and then you can do all the things that you want to do around this. So I think that's all good. I don't think you need to do anything there. I'll close you. So I don't think I need to do anything there. Use new APIs to get HTTP headers. So this is another ASP.NET Core feature. We added new API to expose all common headers available on system.net.http header names as properties on the header dictionary, resulting in an easier to use API. For example, the inline middleware below sets both request and response headers using the new APIs. So we have our host header, date header, which is nice. Let's try using some of those. So I don't know if I use any headers in the API template. I can't remember off the top of my head. In the code, yep, I do. Headers, here we go. So in this case, we're trying to get the if modified since HTTP header in this code. So I wonder if I can just do if modified since. what does this return? String values. And in before, I used to have to try get value, string values. So what this was saying was, does it have that? So var if modified since, and then what we can do instead is say, does it have it? How do you determine if it has that header or not? Since this is, I believe this is a dictionary, so I can do contains key. But is that the best way for performance? So I wonder if I can just do that instead. Count. We can also use any from system.link. So if there's any if modified since header values, we'll take the if modified since we're parsing it as a datetime offset. Yep. That's what's going on there. Is that any simpler? I don't know. Let's have a look. Maybe a little. If anything, we've got an extra line of code though. I'll go with that, I think. Also we have, I wonder if we can set headers now easier. Dot last modified equals this value. That's nicer. Last modified. That's a lot nicer. It's a shame it's a string value as opposed to a date time offset. So it's not strongly typed, it's stringly typed. But it's certainly improved the code slightly in that particular case. So let's see if there's any other examples. So here we're adding another HTTP header. And in this case, it's called the link header. And they do have that one. Turned it into a one-liner, didn't it? Not bad, I think. Not bad. And then I don't even need that constant above. Brilliant. That's a nice little addition to ASP.NET Core. Let me see if there's anything else. Append comma separated values. I can't remember what this did. I think that's fine. Oh, I have some use of headers in my test as well. So let's have a look at that. See if we can make some improvements. If we scroll down, we've got last modified, content type, media type. accept if modified since. I don't think I need to change any code here, since most of these headers, some of these header values were already strongly typed, except this one actually, get values link. So what was this returning? An IEnumerable string link. Can I just do that? Response.headers, HTTP response headers. What did I do before? HTTP response header dictionary. Oh, okay. So this is a HTTP client response header. So that has a different API. That's a shame that they don't have that strongly typed value there. That would have been nice to have, I think. It's a shame that the HTTP client and the HTTP server has such different APIs that they're not really interchangeable. Okay, so we've made some improvements there. Let's just kind of review really quickly. Looks like we can remove a using statement for this one. We've simplified that to a one-liner. Really happy about that particular change. And then this one, okay, we've got an extra line, but I don't think it's the end of the world. If the intent is clearer, I think. And if anything, I think we can simplify that slightly. If we go back to it, we can pull this up here. So if we have a if modified since HTTP header, and if we can parse it out as a datetime offset, and if that modified since is more than when the car was modified, return a 304 not modified response. So I don't really like the name of this variable that I've chosen here. So I think I'm going to rename that to date time. Excuse me. Cool. I think that's a lot cleaner now. If we go back and review the lines of code as well, not that lines of code is a good indication of code quality, but it's an indication of something. I think that's cleaned it out. It's nice and terse, succinct. All the code to deal with if modified since is in this if statement in here, rather than the multiple nested if statements that we had before. Although I'm not sure we needed those multiple nested if statements. I think we could have combined these if statements in this code also. Okay, so that's a nice addition. Let's check in the framework code to see if we're using headers anywhere. And it looks like we are. So there's a vary header. So we can improve that, make that simpler. Improve that. Nice. .pragma. If you're wondering what this code is, by the way, so this is HTTP context extension. So an extension method on HTTP context, and it allows you to set a cache profile, which comes from the caching infrastructure in ASP.NET Core. And you can set how long you want something to be cached for and all of that. And it applies all those HTTP headers to the HTTP context quite nicely. And I use this in, I think, the static middleware. So static files with cache control. Here we go. So I get my cache profiles from my appsettings.json file. There's my cache profile. I want my static files to be cached using the cache control HTTP header or pragma for this long. And I pull that out of the configuration in this cache profile and shove it into this extension method that I apply on the HTTP context that this use static files middleware supplies to me. So it's got some options you can give to it. One of them is on prepare response. You can grab the HTTP context, stick that cache profile on there, and now all your static files have the caching middle HTTP headers on them, which is really nice. So if we go back here, just carry on making sure that we've got all of those sorted out. That's good. We have one more here. I'm not sure this one is supported. Requested. What is the requested with header? X requested with request dot headers dot X requested with. Here we go. So that is supported as well. We can get rid of that. What's this? Okay. That just tells you whether a request is an AJAX request. It's just a very simple extension method. And then here we've got headers.location. That's another nice simplification. And do we have any more? We have some tests here. Here we go. Dot cache control. Let's keep going. Just highlight those. Wonderful. So that's simplified a fair bit of code there. And there's just one more over here. Cool. So that's a super secret feature of ASP.NET Core that slipped most people's attention, but not mine. Keep your eyes on the repo. Cool. We have gone on for an hour. I think we can carry on tomorrow and see where we get to. So I will sign off for today. So what did we do? We should probably check in our code first. I'll do that offline. What did we do? We checked the history. I can't even remember. We got the hot reload sorted out. We got the .NET Run messages sorted out in launchSettings.json. We managed to validate our configuration on startup. We managed to add a bunch of new, using a bunch of new methods on the HTTP headers. We managed to switch from .NET Watch to .NET Watch Run to .NET Watch. I think I may have done that offline, I'm not sure. And I think that's it. Yeah, we'll carry on with this tomorrow and see where we get to. Or you know what, I'll probably start another stream later on today. So thank you everyone for watching.